3, 2, 1. We speak about Meyer. You ask questions.
Yeah.
I'm giving answers.
Yeah. Welcome here to my house, Peter. We're in Texas, 18th of August, 2023. I'm so glad you visited us here. We're gonna have some cool conversations here about Meyer. We've been talking about the Federfechter, and we're gonna try to go deep here. Take this opportunity to share some things, and I think let's just start off by, I'll ask you a question that I asked you previous, and we these are things I'd love to know, love to hear your opinion about. Most importantly, Meyer's age. We've talked about the lack of proof and evidence of him being born in August of 1537. It is debatable.
Yeah, so first of all, everything what I'm going to say here is just mine, very mine, subjective perspective. So I respect very much work of Olivier Dupuy. I know him personally, he's a great guy. And all the other people, including you, who did a great deal of work in the research of Joachim Meyer. The phenomenon is not just the life of him, like his life, his personality, his work, and etc. So tracing, working with the evidence we have, what is written, and etc. Simply, and I pointed out in my translation in the foreword, which I did like 10 years ago, he did like comparing the other works we have from the time, like let's say second half of 16th century. There is nothing like that. So we know, like from Gutenrod, like some people did, kind of manuals, either manuscripts, handwritten, or small prints in early age, but they are far from the structure Meyer gave in 1570. So thinking about he'd be maybe 30 plus doing such a work, maybe it is acceptable. But then we have the previous works. We have the manuscripts, which are dating, around 10 years back in history.
The Lund,
the Rostock,
has been dated 1560, and then all the way to 1568. Dr. Forgan is 68 by virtue of his research. The library in Sweden, that Lund, that owns it, they tentatively dated it at 60. I don't know why. I haven't spoken to them about it, but clearly the most recent rediscovery by Monsieur Olivier Dupuy finds the 1561, dedicated to Georg Hans von Veldenz, and it's an amazing work. I transcribed it, was very grateful to Olivier for sharing that. I'd been searching for it. Others, I believed it existed and was extant. I hoped and prayed and thought, please, to the gods of Meyer, please let this be a thing. And sure enough, he found it, rediscovered it, and shared. And we know it's dated 61, March of 61.
we can believe it is. There is evidence. So that would mean he would make, such a work in his age around 20. While being not a noble, we know that he was marrying in order to get his Bürgerschaft, like citizenship. It is somehow not going well along with the idea that he was born in Basel around like 1537 or something.
37 to 61.
I mean, it's one of the versions. It's one of the
young 20-something.
One of the ways we could work with. I am not supporting it personally, as I'm saying, with great respect to the work and research of others. Yeah. I'm just trying to speculate and like leave the doors open so we can have a look at it from another perspective.
And that's important, Peter, to always view things from another perspective with anything, but especially about Meyer. And sure, it's just biographical data, but it is relevant to his version of a Zorn or his version of the Zwölfregel or anything else. We're looking at potentially where he learned, who he learned from, why, how. All these questions are interesting, and they will help us eventually understand his art better, as they have in a little way already. So it's important. You look at it from a separate angle. There's no harm in saying, what if he was older? What if we go fast forward to 1570, 71 when he died? Yeah, he died. He was an old man. He was in his 50s when he died. No, not 37 years old when he died, kind of healthy and virile, catches a cold. Whoa. Maybe he was older and died in that cold. He died because he was less
Exactly.
Virile and older. I mean, there's all type of...
My personal, like, assuming according to the structure, comparing, the other works, and also nowadays, scholars, what is the structure of the language, how people work, how they express, in written form. What he did in 1570 is not really matching somebody who would be around 30. Like, the scale of the work, his connections, this is very important, his social connections were already very developed. He was dedicating his work to a house of the Kurfürst, so the Electus family. These were the most influential people in the realm of the whole Roman Empire, and etc. So somebody being so young and having no status, being not noble, and etc. It doesn't somehow go well along with this idea of him being born around 1937, 40, something like that.
And you had mentioned to me about his potential service with Friedrich III, the father of Johann Casimir, who he dedicated the 1572. And look what he did then in Mecklenburg. Went to work for the Duke of Mecklenburg and was instructing the Duke's son. So maybe a pattern there.
And again, the Ulrich and the family, the house which is in Mecklenburg, was in his time. This is again Electus family. It is very high. Is the highest class of nobles in the place in the time. So he was not just nobody, some citizen class, fencing master. He was extraordinary in many ways, and we don't know his real social status. This is something what we failed to find, and clear out. We don't know. We know he was probably Protestant or Calvinist, but we don't know. Exactly. There's either we'll find out later, but what we found so far, he was probably not Catholic. No. He was rather on the other side of the spectrum. Yeah. He was linked to people who were not Catholics. They were apparently, like, it's proven that his lineage and people he was working with, they were on the Protestant spectrum.
All reformists. There's
all reformists.
No question.
And then we also miss his early age. Like, he might serve in the military. He could have been squire, he could have been somebody from lower nobility class, being not fond, yet needing to extend his further life, out from military service, becoming very important as a teacher. There are the range of the possibilities, what he could be and how he structured his life and why, it is still a little bit hazy.
It's strange that we wouldn't see a coat of arms of a Meyer family in his 1570. I don't know, I haven't researched enough if he had one, why that wouldn't have appeared there. I remember translating Michael Hund, this early 1612 or about 1612 work. He was a Freifechter, and it was a rapier work dedicated to a duke, and in that we see the Wappen of Michael Hund. I think he was ennobled at some point earlier. You just don't see that in the Meyer.
True. Then he's favoring his works as dedicated to the houses, the mighty houses, and he's apparently favoring them and dedicating the works to them. So there is the Otto von Sulms and his coat of arms, then Johann Casimir and the family in the house of Johann Casimir.
Yeah, with Veldans, the Bavarian.
And so this is quite clear.
Many unanswered questions. We keep digging, we keep looking, but again, it's important to look at it from multiple angles. We've been on a trajectory since early on, and I'm guilty of this, very guilty. A one-track mind, and it's got to be this. It's Meyer or nothing. It's, what is it, Meyer or death?
Meyer or death.
Meyer or death. No, but we don't want to stick to that one track. So you bring in a fresh approach, multiple views, multiple angles, and something can open up.
Critical, constructive critics. When we want to question something, may the result be fruitful. So to question something or to doubt something should lead us to some fruitful result. So everybody can say, no, but the no should have some ground. Why not? So we can say, why not? Because, for instance, there's too many Meyers of his time in the Basel. Then the Messerschmitt's symbol, the crown with the swords, that is related to the organization of these public events, when it was usually happening through the guild, the Messerschmitt's Guild, which was in charge of these public events, as far as we know.
Sure.
So that is helping us to understand, okay, so this is not strictly connected to his person, it is connected to the events where he was involved. But his person as such, we don't have that much of a relevance, while we have a very good relevance when he's signing himself as a Freifechter and then as a Fechtmeister.
Right.
Or first he's using Fechtmeister, and then he's stepping back and he's signing his works as a Freifechter.
Yeah, that word I keyed in on early in my research, thought about it, what the hell does this mean? Not a lot of articles written on it, not a lot of knowledge, and I've come to believe that we know now it was more of a title. You tested for it. It was a lesser rank than Angelobten Meister, avowed master, or then officially approved master. You had to test. I found books and sources on testing for that, Freifechter. So we know that was tested, it was granted.
It was a title for the organization, so maybe for some reason he didn't want, either he couldn't or he didn't want to be the very responsible person for the official or the public events where the Fechtmeister was fully responsible. Maybe he was already tired of that, or for some reason he couldn't use the title, but we know he was examined, he was Fechtmeister, while maybe for professional reasons or the conditions of the place and the time, he used another title, allowing someone else to be in the first place taking care of the event while he was the instructor, or maybe allowing someone else to instruct, and he was just the organizer in behind. Again, we have too many options to look at.
Many possibilities. I mean, I have on my Google Books library, which I've had for many years, I have a library there, and I have a folders created, Federfechter, Marxbruder, just my different areas of interest in research, and one of them is not Joachim Meyer. So it's all of the examples I found of a Joachim Meyer, relevant, very, very close and relevant to a fencer or whatnot, and then I ultimately found were not the Fechtmeister from Strasbourg, and so I kind of cataloged them and digitally saved them, so I wouldn't run into them again, or if anybody else does, then I could say, no, this guy's from Hamburg, he was a brewmaster, he died in 77 or 80. Then I even found a very interesting thing early on, and I shared with a few people in HEMA, a Rittmeister in Livonia named Joachim Meyer, and I found correspondence between this Joachim Meyer, handwritten, that I was able to transcribe, and tantalizing details about his participation in these great wars with Christian the 13th, I'm getting that confused, Christian the 13th or 14th, this king of Denmark. Clearly, and there's even some passages in there between other high-ranking military officers saying Joachim Meyer killed a man in a duel, and it's all cool because that dude was a scumbag and had it coming. And so, I had hoped and prayed that this was our Fechtmeister from Strasbourg. Then I could say, yes, military guy. I have loads and loads of research on that. Ultimately, Olivier Dupuy finds these requests for Fechstchulen at the exact same time and date in Strasbourg, where I have Joachim Meyer geographically in Tallinn, way up there, Lithuania, and Tallinn,
and Pärnu. These are very distant places.
And I'm thinking, but then some of my colleagues they didn't want to pursue the scientific method and said, no, he could have sailed on a boat all the way down and had a Fechstchulen and sailed back up. I'm like, no, he was probably at war. We don't know. It still could be him. There still could be something we're missing, but the dates and times don't jibe. So again, it's an example of how many iterations of Joachim Meyers there were. Jewish Meyers, not just reformist Meyers, Catholic Meyers, Swiss, so many possibilities.
But still, there are facts we know. We know that these people were traveling a lot, because we have the evidence that people from very far distant places were going down to Strasbourg and organizing Fechstschule. Then we know people from Strasbourg were also going to other places and traveling. It was part of the Wanderschaft, the journeyman experience. And So he was probably, when he was younger, he was maybe going the same way, or he was having some military experience, or like professional, lineage, which maybe ended up, if he was really around 50 when he was working for the nobles, so he could be like maybe 45 to 55 when he started to produce, his manuscripts. There could be, we can imagine he was really serving 10, 12 years for some nobles and joining some campaigns.
Yeah, man.
And very well, he could have been, a trader, somebody who was doing his trade, sort of artisan, moving, all around the place, learning from different people.
Yeah. Well established. Clearly, by 1570, he was well established in those circles. To hire such a professional artist in the Mannerist style of Tobias Stimmer and others. He had money, he had influence. I've often said this and I laugh about it. His 1570 gründliche Beschreibung is alien to all the other contemporary sources. It's like some alien, it's like some outers. It's just so unique. Why don't we see too much as revealing, as comprehensive, as well done in the art? I know others have talked a lot about this, but it stands to reason. Would a 30-something, would a 20-something, would a younger, less experienced common Fechtmeister who was also a cutler, would a person like that have the wherewithal and the ability to produce such a magnus opus of fencing? And then think about it this way: the secrets, the great secrets that were probably kept hidden, and you'd have to pay a Marksbruder master of the longsword to learn this, and yet here's a man who's writing it. Who else did that? We see other books,
the only
but
one,
nothing
only
like
one
that.
who revealed the mechanism of the zettel, the verses.
Yes.
Because he's saying, okay, the old verses are somehow outdated, so I'm presenting you new ones, and then he's explaining the meaning, and the explanation is going well along with his gründliche Beschreibung, so the thorough description of all the elements, so you can perfectly understand how does it work and how to memorize these things. So he wanted to come out from this stereotype of being mysterious. He wanted the reader to be very clear, and he's also explicitly clear in the description. Every young man should get sufficient understanding and enlightenment from reading this book to being not confused, but on the contrary, with the teacher, with his master, achieving good levels in the art.
I think so. Several of his works mention that you must have a master.
Oh yes,
you can't just do this from a book. You must have a master. We were dejected when we come to that part and translate it and went, but it didn't stop us. We drive forward. But it's telling. It's very telling of who and what he was, that he's writing this so comprehensive, and yet still suggesting you must. In the Lund, he says the same thing to young Otto Solms. You find yourself a good teacher, and I hope you find my pitiful work. He's always self-deprecating. So it's so tough to transcribe and translate those words. It's fun, and then you just think, wow, this guy was really, just really humble and down. But
humble, polite. It's a politeness of the time. It's something we maybe miss today, and we miss it definitely in the social media.
Oh yeah.
We have this comradeship, like no formal, informal division.
Yeah.
I mean, no problem. But then how can we address, the more important levels of the communication where we don't see each other, flesh to flesh.
Yeah.
Sometimes important facets of the communication are just washed away, and the bad tone is coming. And he made sure that will certainly not happen.
Yeah.
And everything what he does will be well understood.
Amazing. Just some of his words are amazing about the decline of the fencing arts and the rise of the gun, and those are just those are issues of his time that he was so contemporary. But again, trying to figure out his birth, his death. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I've done an amazing amount of research without any luck.
Well, I was not lucky as well. As you know, I addressed the archives in Mecklenburg, in Schwerin, and also other places. I don't know if our readers will know about that there are two Strasbourgs, and the one in the north is actually written the way which is written in 1570. It's not with a double S, but there is the scharfes S.
Yeah.
So we also addressed that place. They answer there is no evidence about nobody of the name Joachim Meyer. But again, like, it is too early because the matrikas, the register books were just like found. They started with these registrations later. It's 17th century onwards. So if he wasn't a noble, there is no evidence about his birth or his activity or whatever.
Yeah.
So no, so far no. Nonetheless, 1571. He's dying, probably due to some lung inflammation or like some respiratory problem, and we don't know where his grave is.
It's interesting. I found some sources that official correspondence archived between the court, the Hofmeister of Johann Albrecht, Duke of Mecklenburg, where he is basically saying, "Boy, I wish we would have known about this sooner. We could have got this man help." There was some interesting information that's been discovered lately by colleagues of mine that there was not a court physician in place yet, and that they needed one there, if I've got that correctly. So it wasn't, again, we don't know what castle he was in. There was 7 or 8 there in Schwerin, in Altstadt, we don't know. And yet, remember, he was there to teach the Duke's son. Where was the son? Maybe he was housed at a closer place to where the son lived. Where would the cemetery be for that? The funerary rites. There's a lot of unanswered questions. But it just sounded like he died. The way that sentence reads, I found one in German and then another correspondence that was in Latin. And Heinrich Husseinus was this court hofmeister for the Duke, and it basically said, it sounded like he died suddenly, this quickly. It wasn't a lingering thing where they were, he was languishing away. Maybe nobody says when. We don't know when he contracted the illness versus on the 24th of February. If that was even the date, that's just when it was recorded. Could have been the 20th, could have been the 20th, at any point, but
hopefully we'll get some more information in future, because as we didn't know, 10 years ago there was, or maybe 12 years ago, there was just the print, and then suddenly first manuscript, second manuscript, and then third manuscript from Munich.
And colored 1570s or 1600s, which you used to great effect in your published works. Those are beautiful. I could only dream about having them 10 or so years ago. We
all would.
There were some that were crayoned in. I definitely saw that. It looked like a pastel pencil, and it was very rudimentary. And we thought, what a neat idea, but these are more.
What is unfortunate when we speak about Joachim Meyer's personality, Jakob Sutor, his work resembles Meyer's work, but it's a lesser, imperfect, I don't want to say copy, but he himself is not saying anything which would help us to understand what was his relationship to Joachim Meyer. He was just amazed. He somehow continued, or like he wanted to be in lineage of the work, while there is no further trace to help us to understand what was his relationship, what was his motivation to do it, and etc.
And here's the interesting thing, you bring up Suter. I dove deep into that early on and did some translation work on that, and here recently wrote an article about the unscrupulous nature of the man who published in 1612, the Jakob Suter, and his name was Wilhelm Hofmann from Frankfurt. Him and another gentleman were renowned for plagiarizing, just stealing, outright stealing someone's work, republishing it, putting their name on it, if they did, if they didn't. So that begs the question, was the Suter work excerpted from a larger compendium of work? He said that, Wilhelm Hofmann said that this is from Suter, who taught it at a university, the great Bavarian, Baden-Baden, this great Fechtschule. But would you think maybe it was a larger, who knows what
the question
Hofmann
is,
did?
Meyer put in his 1570 work the note about the rights. So for 10 years,
Yes.
not allowed
Yeah.
to print under the
Imperial order.
imperial.
Yeah.
So for 10 years, so 1580 onwards, the book was basically available as it is today. So
Yes.
there are no rights, no copyrights.
Yeah.
And Sutor, for some reason he decided to follow that lineage. Even though like in the time we have still like ongoing lineages in like Heidelberg and like universities and etc.
Right.
But he's following specifically the Joachim Meyer's work.
I contend that Suter may have been dead by 1612, maybe 1590s. He was, because this Hofmann, and I again did a deep dive into this and found so many examples of Wilhelm Hofmann, this bastard printer, stealing, and he gets called out by several important people. Look, watch out for this dude. He's a scumbag. He'll steal your work and print it. You know, and it's like today you would be, academically, you would be ruined to do that. But back then, I guess he didn't live long. Funny enough, though, he didn't live long. It's interesting. They don't say how he died, if it was violently or otherwise, but he was renowned for doing that. So maybe Suter wasn't even alive in 1612, but this guy Hofmann had done a bunch. Yeah, you're right, though. Suter definitely parallels, not the rapier, though. If you
Not the
look deep
rapier,
at that,
yes.
that's something else. That is some other iteration and evolution there by 1612, and it's an interesting work, though.
Speaking about rapier, it is definitely good to point that Meyer's concept of rapier is unique, and it's probably the richest compendium we have about the early rapier or side sword, because he is describing few elements, few moves, which are very typical only for his understanding, while his contemporary authors are not even speaking about it. And then we see it in Destreza, in Spanish school. But there's nowhere else. French school, Italian school is not emphasizing dämpfen, to suppressing, and etc.
Yeah.
Also, the proportion of cutting and stabbing, having like equal proportion of using the blade, and still using the original, the elder division of the blade, so 3 parts instead of the 4, because then Italians were dividing the blades into the 4 parts. It is unique and it's very rich. It is still one of the richest descriptions of rapier work. Fascinating.
You just stirred my memory. We just had a recent conversation a day or so ago that I wish we would have recorded. We got deep in talking about the origins of Meyer and perhaps his knowledge of Marozzo, and that in the 1561 you see the image clearly of the Marozzo image with, and that's Meyer. Looks like it's a young Meyer himself there, and I don't know if he looks in his 20s or 30s, I don't know, but speak a little bit more about that, please, because you have some interesting ideas on his influences by Meyer, Paulus Hechter, and that's we segued off into a whole crazy conversation. You've published Meyer, and you really have some insight on that. I'd like for you to share with us.
So while we were working on, we means Maximilian Povig from Augsburg. He's got a degree in history, and he found a very interesting lineage or resource which is related to Paul von Stetten. There was a guy around 1760 who started digging around Paulus Hechter Meyer, and he actually found many things. He also managed to buy a few relics, some artifacts from the big auction which happened after his death. And among these things there were his personal memoirs, which are telling us a little bit more about what was the situation like, and there is a big speculation about how he ended up in the galleys, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of Joachim Meyer and Paulus Hechter, while Paulus Hechter lived until 1562, I guess, or 64, I'm not sure, my memory is betraying me now, but that is a time when Joachim Meyer was surely alive. So we know Paulus Hechter was more than 60. He was very influential in Augsburg. He was still working as a Raddienst, so he was working for the city hall or town hall office. He was in charge of material which was flowing through the office, so every building material, nails and whatever was bought or like delivered to the city, he was in charge of it. Big money, big thing. And he was also organizing public events, or fencing, dancing, merrymaking, and he was very good at it. Even, and thanks to Paul von Stetten, we know he didn't want to do it, because some people wanted to take, over. They wanted to be those in charge of these events, and he would allow them to do. High nobles, and especially Albrecht, the Bavarian duke, he wanted to be Paulus Hector in charge for some reason. He was just good in doing it because he was doing it for a very long time. And speculation, when somebody like Joachim Meyer, who was already exposed to nobles, he would probably, it's not a big deal to imagine that he could take place either as one of the fencers who would take place in such fencing, either presenting, demonstrating, or doing something. He could be very well in Augsburg, not only once. Then these two men had a good chance to meet. Then we can even speculate further. Jörg Broy, who was doing the illustrations for Paulus Hector Meyer's work, maybe some of the fencers in the work of Paulus Hector, maybe some of them is Joachim Meyer, because he was certainly
that wouldn't be a far
using and allowing maybe the best fencers, best people from this fencing community. So maybe some of them is Joachim Meyer.
A representation,
I heard speculations about it, but we have no proof that in the Dresdner that there are 3 versions of Paulus Hector. So in one of them there is a man which would resemble in his appearance Joachim Meyer from the 1570 print, but it's not a picture. It's not a photo image.
No.
So it is just pure speculation. Nonetheless, it is not impossible. These two men had a chance to meet, and not only one opportunity to do so. Then we also know Sigmund Ringegg, who was serving earlier in the court of the Bavarian dukes, the electors of Bavaria. He could have been also connected, or like his lineage, to Paulus Hector, because Paulus was not only once in the house of Albrecht and the dukes in Burghausen, where probably Sigmund Ringegg was serving. He lived there as a Schirmmeister. So
does the timelines match up there though? No, that's 1540s.
No, it's later. Ringegg is end of 15th century when Paulus Hector is born around like beginning. So we know the manuscript according to the writing and the structure can be like end, but Ringegg could very well live further on. So
and his influence was
and
probably
his influence
fresh.
was there, so he was teaching. He was teaching in the place. So there were people who at least experienced his teaching, and then it was passed on the family. So Albrecht and his children, they were educated by people like Sigmund Ringegg or Ringegg himself, while Albrecht was apparently educated by Ringegg, or maybe not educated, but they knew each other. So we no need to just admit that these people were meeting each other, but there is also a good chance that they met in flesh, including Marozzo, because we know Paulus Hector was having his print, and we don't know if Marozzo's work was a motivation for Paulus, or Paulus was, motivation for Marozzo. This is a good question, because the Italian masters and the German-speaking masters, they made sure that it's not overlapping for some reason, yet they knew each other.
You said this, and it's interesting. I happen to know someone who owns the actual copy of Marozzo.
Owned by Paulus
Hector Meyer, and it'd be interesting to go through there. I'm sure there's no marginalia or anything in there. Otherwise, maybe there is. You just have to get to Italy and try to look at that again. Yeah, your work that I'm reading on Paulus Hector Meyer, and your knowledge of the biographical data, and that is deep and important to our study of Meyer. It's important to the whole study because it helps us understand how they could be interconnected and interrelated. And when you look at the physicality of the art, the physical techniques, it's not like one's from Mars and one's from Venus and this one's from Jupiter.
There's a lineage.
It's a pan-European. We used to use that word early on in HEMA with the pan-European, and that's probably still a good word for describing particular weapon systems, rapier especially. But when it comes to Meyer and you look at the side sword and is it from Marozzo, and how many times 19th or 20th century historians would see a Meyer and say, oh, that's what would they say, Vigiani, what is it, the castle, the Egerton castle. They said, oh, that's clearly Vigiani or Di Grassi, or they were just plug and play. They do, you know. Isn't it cool how today in the 21st century we might know a little more?
Yeah, it would be definitely nice.
We're digging away at these details. Yeah, no.
But one thing for the comparison, one thing is very important. We know Marozzo was teaching not very big amount of people. He was having a few students. He was teaching in his courtyard, and he was teaching in the university or school, which was typical for the fencing masters of the time. And he dedicated his work to his own son. So somehow Marozzo himself was not having these very high social connections as, for instance, Paulus Hector or Joachim Meyer. That is also something we should take under consideration and pay a constructive critics on it, because that could help us to understand better where is the influence. Because Italians in that time were very far in, like the social development in Italy was happening faster. So the city-states, like Italians started the Renaissance in 14th century, while the Central European space, thanks to different riots and warfares, we were just like way behind. Yeah, the arts as well. Germany, clearly. So this is something we have to understand, and it's, as you said, you know, this is the rabbit hole where one research is just leading to another, and we definitely need to study the surrounding, you know, space of the information of the time, and that will help us to not only to understand, but also something will come, as usually, like the secondary effect of specific research can be a breakthrough in another. That's my theory with rabbit hole research. You dig a hole, you mine the walls going down. There may be copper and tin and other things that are valuable, peripheral histories. Even if when you get to the bottom, you don't get that gem that you were looking for. Oh, Meyer was this, or, you know, it's just in the digging. True. Just got to get to digging. Just dig, baby, and that's what I continue to do. And with you and I have done some incredible stuff here lately, and there's more to come. And I just publicly, I'm very grateful for sharing the archive stuff you have, because that is so much fun to transcribe and translate. It's we're going to shed a lot of light on the Federfechter here soon, and hopefully Meyer and before the end, like for the audience, very little has been digitalized so far. So if everybody HEMA if you're living in, you know, in a place where there's archive, just pay a visit, ask for names, ask for fencing, and you may hit on resources, manuals which are not digitalized yet, and it can be a great asset to the community. So yes, the research is going on, and it should go on with less internet research, but more visiting, more sharing, and discussing. In-person discussing. There's no better way. It's great to talk online, and I do that all the time with many people, but there's nothing like just looking at someone and sharing and then saying, you know what, you're wrong, I think you're wrong, and he says, no. Constructive critics, always. I think you're wrong. No, Kevin, you're all right, so we're having fun now. Listen, do you want to wrap this up? We'll see. We'll see, and maybe do some more, talk about some more subjects while I've got you here in Dallas, man. It's so good to have you here. Honor and pleasure as always. Right on. Strength and honor. Thanks for tuning in.